Hello and welcome to Question Time. This evening, the subject is the abolition of the British slave trade. Our participants tonight are Aluda Equiano, published novelist and freed slave; William Wilberforce, prominent figure in the British Parliament during the 18th century; and Eric Williams, a renowned historian whose work was published in the 20th century. Basra Paladin, a well-known pro-slavery parliamentarian, and Lord CWAS, who in 1807 took the keynote speech in the bill which led to the ban of the British slave trade. Can we have our first question from the floor, please? Adrian Green.
Wilberforce, how and why did you take up the cause of the abolition?
It was primarily because of the Quakers, and Mr. Equiano in particular, that I became involved in the campaign for abolition. The Quakers, or dissenters as they're formerly known, were banned from Parliament, and therefore approached me to act as a sympathetic spokesman for them in Parliament, appealing to my Anglican beliefs. They argued that the crimes committed against enslaved Africans in the New World were unjustified. They proclaimed that the natural order of the world rejected this treatment, and the teachings of the Gospel denounced it by stating that man must do unto others as he would have them do unto him. Our argument was done. That in the eyes of God, all men have been created equally and must be treated as such. Morally, our argument was invalid. Working alongside Mr. Thomas Clarkson, I soon bore witness to the gruesome treatment of slaves in the colonies and along the Middle Passage. The Quakers had already acquired such an awareness from their cousins in the New World who lived with slavery on their doorstep. As the case of James...
Okay. That's good, Mr. Williams. Mr. Wilberforce. But we must take the next question, please. The man in the 16th century Greek.
Equiano, how did you align yourself with the Quakers, and what were you involved And were you involved with the Quakers in America?
When I lived in America as a slave, my owner and teacher, Mr. Robert King of Philadelphia, was a Quaker. When he released me from slavery, I worked freely in America for a while before coming to Britain, where, by the precedent of the 1772 Somerset versus Stewart case, all black men were declared free. I came here as a Methodist, and remain a Methodist to this day. However, I felt strongly in favour of the abolition, on moral grounds proposed by the Quakers, and as a result aligned myself to their cause. I suppose I was indirectly involved with the Quakers in America, since I supported the denunciation of those Quakers who continued to use their slaves in the New World. I also assisted those Quakers who did not own slaves in their campaign for the abolition among the founding fathers of America, particularly Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin.
Okay, next question, please. Yes?
For the panel, what were your reasons for supporting the abolition of the slave trade?
If we could please take Mr. Horace first, then Tarleton, Equiano, finally Mr. Wilberforce. So, Mr. Horace.
From 1790, the slave trade and the income derived from it declined significantly. What remained in 1807 was little more than a remnant of the trade, accounting for less than 1% of Britain's export trade capital, and thus supported the abolition primarily for economic reasons. Indeed, between 1799 and 1807, Britain's monopoly in the Atlantic slave trade had been lost, and there was sufficient evidence to suggest that slave populations could now sustain themselves. I believe that the trade in the West Indies could continue, but the unprofitable trade in slaves should be dispensed.
How bloody ridiculous! I'm afraid that my noble friend is gravely mistaken. In the early part of the 19th century, the slave trade continued to support a number of export industries, employing a significant number of sailors, and linking all of the industries within and between port towns. It was outrageous to suggest that there would not be economic damage as a result of the abolition of slavery. In addition, I believe that the news of a ban on slave trading would soon spread to the colonies, and this could easily agitate the Africans, meaning that the West Indian trade would be significantly destabilized. Moreover, it seems that banning the trade in Britain on economic grounds would simply have the adverse effect of allowing foreigners greater access to our lucrative market.
And Mr. Equiano, what were your reasons for supporting the abolition?
My reasons are primarily moral. Indeed, not only do the scriptures attest for the equal birthright of all mankind, but they also dictate that one must treat others as he would like to be treated, as I've already mentioned. In bringing forth the case of James Somerset, it was stipulated that by law no man should own another in Britain. Thus, I argued, why should one man own another elsewhere? Moreover, as the writings of Mr. John Newton, a renowned ex-slave ship captain, attested the conditions of the Middle Passage were heart-shudderingly horrific. They were beyond any economic justification. Indeed, Newton himself withdrew from the trade to become life as a clergyman in an effort to repent for his sins.
For too long, the practice of slavery was legitimised on the basis of race. The notion that Negroes, particularly those from the hinterlands, were primitive, warring cannibals, and that by enslaving them we were civilising them, simply was not true, no matter what the abolitionists claimed. The work of the African Association found Africa to have been a land of relative peace preceding the slave trade, a land whose inhabitants had their own cultures and commercial practices. As Equiano has pointed out, the scriptures dictate that all mankind has been created equally and must be treated so. The work of the African Association upheld this view, and for me, the harm that African slaves suffered was far greater than the economic damage that could be caused to planters if wage labour was implemented. It's for this reason that I supported the abolition.
Okay, and the next question.
William, in your opinion, how did the Haitian Revolution affect the abolition debate?
The Haitian Revolution caused serious repercussions for the existence of the slave trade. Haiti, formerly known as Saint-Domingue, was one of the prominent ship-producing regions at the time, with whomever occupying it receiving substantial amounts of capital from returns on ship trade. Pitt's alignment with the abolition debate slowly began to shift to the anti-abolitionist argument, as he wanted to capture the resource-rich region of Saint-Domingue. Obviously, he could not have Saint-Domingue and abolition as well. Fearful that the idealism of the French revolutionary movement would destroy the slave trade and slavery, the French planters of Saint-Domingue in 1791 offered the island to England, which was later accepted in 1793 when war broke out with France. What proceeded from here was a fight to capture the colony, first from the French and then from the black inhabitants. In the process, Britain destroyed the world sugar bowl. The slave insurrection in Saint-Domingue sent the price of sugar in the European market spiralling. Prices rose by 50% between 1788 and 1793. The inability to capture the region of Saint-Domingue and its ruins saw the rise of two new players in the world market in the form of Cuba and Bonaparte. This competition led to British West Indian surpluses high enough in England, and the British West Indian planter producing at a loss. In 1806, the surplus of sugar in England amounted to 6,000 tons, and thus production had to be curtailed, and the only way to achieve this was to abolish the slave trade. So we can see through a series of right-hand effects that the Haitian Revolution affected the abolition of the slave trade. First, through gearing the pro-abolitionist argument off course in a bid to secure the main ship-producing region of Saint-Domingue, and secondly, through producing an imbalance in the market, which eventually led to Britain's inability to trade, and therefore they were forced to end their trading in slaves to save their kind economy. And may I add, in my opinion, Wilberforce was an effeminate religious cook.
Okay. What an interesting meeting this has been. Next week we'll be in Ganto discussing the expansion of sheep farming in the 14th century. Thank you. Good night.